and where you want on Canada's news app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon. I'm Julie Buckingham. At 12 o'clock, it's cloudy and -4 in downtown Winnipeg. Some sunny breaks this afternoon, the high of 1. Garbage fees are set to go up this year, but a promised plan to reduce that hike has yet to come forward. The mayor's inner circle will vote on the city's proposed new solid waste utility fee today. The CBC's Cameron McLean reports.
The city is changing the way it bills for garbage collection. It's rolling fees for garbage, recycling, and yard waste into a new solid waste utility fee. That means homeowners can expect their garbage fees to go up $97.50 this year. Water and Waste Committee Chair Ross Eady said earlier this month he planned to propose a way to lower that increase, but that proposal was not ready by the time the committee voted on it. The higher garbage fee comes on top of water and sewer rates going up $168 for a typical home, and a 5.95% property tax increase, which works out to an average of $121. If approved, the combined city fees would add up to more than $368 for the average homeowner. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A community leader accused of sexual assault last year is no longer facing the charge. Haji Hesso is the executive director of the Yazidi Association of Manitoba. He's agreed to a peace bond for the next 18 months, barring him from contacting the woman who accused him of sexual assault. He must also stay at least 100 meters away from the woman's home, work, and place of worship. Hesso was arrested in November after allegedly uttering a threat towards the individual and breaking conditions not to communicate with her. Those charges and the sexual assault count have been stayed as a result of that peace bond. The executive director of Bike Winnipeg says that changes made to the rules of the road don't go far enough. Yesterday, the province announced plans to introduce a law ordering drivers to stay 1 meter away from cyclists. Mark Coho says that might work in areas where vehicles are driving 30 kilometers an hour, but it's too close for higher speeds.
We're a little concerned that it's pretty minimalist in what it's asking for, and we don't think really it's enough. So certainly, I think we'd be happier if it was 1.5 meters, at least for anything over 50 kilometers an hour.
The province says the 1 meter distance brings us in line with other jurisdictions. Prime Minister Carney is in Iqaluit after leaving London early this morning.
Sovereignty, reinforce and affirm our sovereignty in Nunavut, but more broadly in the Arctic, protect our people. But most fundamentally,
this hour, he will be announcing a major influx of funding for the region. It firms up plans for an early warning radar system along the Canada-U.S. border, a partnership announced with Australia in 2022. He'll also be announcing more than $900 million in new cash. The money will go towards projects including affordable housing and a hydroelectric development near the community. Following the deadly Israeli airstrikes in Gaza overnight, the United Nations is issuing 3 demands. Here is Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
First, for the ceasefire to be fully respected. Second, for humanitarian aid to have access to Gaza in an unimpeded way. And third, for the unconditional release of hostages. And we will not give up on these objectives.
The assault breaks the Gaza ceasefire, and the Israel Foreign Ministry spokesperson says there could be more strikes to come.
From this point forward, Israel will act against Hamas with increasing military intensity.
Health ministry officials in Gaza say the Israeli airstrikes killed more than 400. The White House says U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have just wrapped up a highly anticipated call. Reports say their conversation lasted about 2 hours. The U.S. wants to persuade the Russian leader to sign off on a 30-day ceasefire proposal. The Kremlin calls it a historic call, but details of the conversation aren't known. Canada's inflation rate took a big jump last month. Statistics Canada says it surged to 2.6%, up from 1.9% in January. Manitoba's inflation rate went from 2.7% in January up to 3.5% last month. We are continuing to follow the story of a by-election in one part of Winnipeg. Voters have until 8 o'clock tonight in that riding to cast their ballots. We'll continue to bring you updates and more details as they become available. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 12:30. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can listen anywhere on the free CBC News app. Turning to your forecast. In Winnipeg, we are anticipating clouds for this afternoon, some sunny breaks later on, the high heading up to 1 degree. For Brandon, overcast and -2 this afternoon. Heading over to Dauphin, a mix of sun and clouds, the high -1. In Flin Flon and the Paw, also having a mixture of sun and clouds today, the high -5. For Thompson, a mix of sun and clouds, some light flurries on the way, the high -7. Up in Churchill, mainly sunny, the high -18. Wind chill making it feel like -35. This is CBC Radio 1.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You are listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, 97.9 FM in Brandon, on the CBC Listen app, and streaming on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Thank you so much for joining us. Here's what's coming up on the show today. After 12:30 during our call-in segment, March is Nutrition Month here in Canada, and it can be challenging these days to feed yourself a nutritious meal in light of rising costs of food. We're going to have a dietitian join us to take your questions and give us some tips after 12:30. But first up here, it's that time of year again. Where is the worst road in Manitoba? CAA Manitoba kicks off their annual campaign, and we're going to hear more coming right up. It is a sign of spring. And no, I'm not talking about the snow melting or more daylight. We're talking about potholes and other road damage as a result of the long winters here in Manitoba. It is also this time of year that CAA Manitoba asks Manitobans to vote for the worst roads in the province. This year is the campaign's 14th year. Ewald Friesen is the manager of government and community relations for CAA Manitoba and joins me now via Zoom. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me, Ewald.
Thanks for having me again. Great to be here.
What is the Worst Roads in Manitoba campaign for folks who haven't heard of it before?
So the Worst Roads the campaign is a product of what we know Manitobans are telling us. So we do quite a lot of research here at CAA, and what we learned in a recent survey was there's a lot of concern for the state of our roads and investments in infrastructure. 96% of our respondents said that they were concerned or very concerned with the state of our roads. 84% of Manitobans said that they're not being fixed in a timely way. And a bit shockingly, 61% said that the situation is actually getting worse. So we know that folks tend to take these concerns and they'll bring them to their colleagues or their coworkers or even, unfortunately, their partner or spouse, and sometimes their mechanic. So we decided to provide an opportunity for Manitobans to have their voice heard so that your friends here at CAA could take it to the folks who are in a position to make the necessary changes to help improve our roads.
So this is to highlight the conditions of roads right across Manitoba. This is the 14th year now that CAA Manitoba has done this. I'm curious to know, are there some roads some thoroughfares that CAA finds are repeat offenders here that people just continually to vote for year after year after year?
Yeah, we have examples from both camps. We have those usual suspects that we sometimes refer to them as, and then we have some success stories. The usual suspects that we see are Saskatchewan Avenue, Kenniston often comes up. Empress was a road that continuously came up. Grant Avenue. These are ones that we see a lot. Leela, those have been around for quite some time. However, there's been an interesting trend year over year. For instance, last year, our number one road was a rural road. And the year prior to that, 2023, our top three were all rural roads. So we know that there's something going on. We're very encouraged by the rural participation in our campaign. So when it comes to successes, last year's 18th Street in Brandon, wow, what a story. When we launched our top 10 worst roads, it was during question period at the Manitoba legislature, and Premier Canoe got up and committed to fixing 18th Street. A couple months later, there was an announcement of funding, $9 million to fix it. And a couple months after that, shovels in the ground.
So we are seeing that some roads are getting repaired as a result of the survey.
Absolutely. And the same goes true, the same is true for Goulet here in St. Boniface. It had been one of those usual suspects who came onto our list, periodically. And then what happened was after our 2023 campaign, folks got to work. We saw a coordinated effort from two levels of government, both the city of Winnipeg and the province. And today, the residents of St. Boniface have a dedicated bike path, bump outs at the crosswalks, a resurfaced road. So we know folks are paying attention. We know the government is paying attention, but we can't do it without Manitoban support.
What kind of damage are we seeing on our roads this time of year? I mean, we talk about potholes. That's obviously the big one. But what else are we seeing there in terms of road conditions and damage out there?
That's right. Potholes, no, that's not, new to most Manitobans. That's our number one concern. But in addition to that, we see cracked or uneven road surfaces. We see broken curbs. We see sunken sewer grates. But our campaign is open to motorists, which is great, but it's also open to cyclists and pedestrians, which is worth noting. So some of the criteria for what constitutes a bad road could include things like poorly timed lights or crosswalk lights that don't work, or anything that might affect you on your bike. There's a lot of things you can select, or maybe your friends here at CA are missing one and you'd like to add it. That's an option too.
Mm-hmm. What kind of damage are you seeing or hearing from people to their vehicles as a result of these conditions?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the most common types of vehicle damage that we're experiencing are, of course, flat tires, bent or broken rims, suspension issues, and other primarily wheel-related damages. The thing to note also on this question of vehicle damage, again, from our statistic, we learned that 52% of Manitobans have experienced vehicle damage as a result of bad roads. What's more alarming than that is that 80% of those folks who have experienced vehicle damage are actually paying for it out of pocket rather than making a claim with MPI. And so add it all together, how much are Manitobans paying out of pocket for vehicle damage as a result of bad roads? That number comes to $882. So at a time when family budgets are stretched a little bit more than they have been historically, at a time when Manitobans are holding on to their cars a little longer than they usually would, a hit of $882 on the family budget is quite a lot. So in many respects, road infrastructure and investment is an affordability issue.
So Ewald, I have to ask you, why would you encourage Manitobans to take part in the survey from CAA Manitoba?
So we can't do it without you. We know it gets results. Year over year, we've seen governments prioritize roads that have been on our top 10 worst list. Moreover, anybody who enters our Worst Roads campaign is automatically entered to win a year worth of free gas. Who could say no to that? And it's a fun thing to do with your community. On that note, Peguis First Nation a couple of years ago, we noticed an interesting thing in the data that the road they were nominating, Provincial Road 224, it was making its way up the list, and we wondered what's going on. And then it occurred to us that there's folks getting together with their friends to vote up a road, and we were really impressed by this. So you can vote every day. You can tell your friends and, get onto the same road every day if you wish. And really let the decision makers know that we care about this and we'd like to see some action.
Evald, I want to thank you so much for joining us today here on the show. Who would have thought a popularity contest for the worst road, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Voting does work. So let's, if you'd like to nominate a road, you can go to www.caworstroads.com.
Thank you very much, Evald.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That is Evald Friesen, the Manager of Government and Community Relations for CAA Manitoba. Again, you can vote for the worst road in Manitoba until April. I believe it's April 8th at caaworstroads.com.
Winkler and Morden, let's talk. CBC wants to get to know you a little bit better. I'm Rosanna Hempel. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to Winkler and Morden March 17th to 21st. What do you want us to know about your communities? What stories are we missing? I can't wait to meet you. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
It is 12:15 and you are listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app and streaming on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Still ahead here, Soup's On, the annual Stone Soup fundraiser is happening right now in Winnipeg in support of school meal and snack programs. We'll take you there coming right up. But let's talk about your forecast today here in Winnipeg. We're looking at a high of 1 under a mainly cloudy sky. A few sunny breaks this afternoon. Light wind out of the northwest at 10 to 20 kilometers per hour. Tonight dropping down to a low of -7 and clearing sky tonight to a partly cloudy sky. Tomorrow mix of sun and cloud and a high of 2. Thursday, increasing cloud in the afternoon, high of 4 degrees, and then we cool off on Friday, high of -7 under a mix of sun and cloud. Current temperatures right now, cloudy in Brandon at -6. Drifting snow for you in Churchill at -20 with a west-northwest wind gusting to 46. Mostly cloudy in Dauphin, -5 at this hour. Flin Flon, -9 and mostly cloudy for you. Right now in the Paw, it is sunny and -7. Light snow in Thompson and -11. And in Winnipeg, at both the Forks and the airport, it is -3 and cloudy. The 13th annual Stone Soup fundraiser is taking place right now in downtown Winnipeg. It is happening at Rudy's Eat and Drink in the Manitoba Hydro Building. The event is part of a week-long fundraiser for the Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba. Maxine Meadows is a community dietitian and operations manager with the Child Nutrition Council and joins me now. Well, hello, Maxine.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Okay, so tell us what is happening and where are you right now?
Yeah, for sure. So we're downtown at Rudy's right now, and this is our media launch and tasting event for the week. So we have some participating restaurants down here. They've made their soups. They brought it down for people to taste, just so they can get a sampling of what the week-long event may look like. So all of our restaurants, we have over 50 restaurants participating this week all throughout the province. And they're all listed on our website. So you can check out childnutritioncouncil.com and click on the Stone Soup 2025 to see who's participating.
Have you had a chance to sample any of the soups that are being served up?
You know what? That's a great question, but I haven't yet because I've been walking around talking to so many great people. So we have some donors and supporters out here. We have some of the sponsors of the event that came out, our board members that are volunteering. So there's a ton of people around. So I've been around talking more than I have been eating.
Now, I hope you get a chance to sample some of the soup. I really do appreciate taking you taking the time to speak with us here on Radio Noon. But 13 years now, the Stone Soup fundraiser has been taking place. What makes it such a success?
You know what? It's really our main awareness event. We want to get out there and tell people about school meal and snack programs here in our province. we want to be able to share the story about what's happening in our schools and in our communities. So we're really supporting over 400 school meal and snack programs all across the province, and they work really hard every day to provide food to students at school. So that's really the success behind this event, is being able to share the work of what's happening in the school. So it's really community coming together. You know, the restaurants are volunteering their time and making a donation for every bowl of soup sold. We have great sponsors from our province that, have sponsored the event. And it's really everyone coming together to do their bit to make sure that this works out in support of our schools.
Now, March is Nutrition Month here in Canada, and the impact of good food, healthy food for students. How does having nutritious food impact children?
Yeah, it really sets up for a day of success at school. But these programs are much more than the food. The food is important. It's critical to these programs. But it's really that sense of community at that school. It's peers eating together. It's developing food skills. There's tons that go into these programs. And I think that, the nutrition is a big piece, but there's so many other pieces to these programs as well.
Tell us if people want to donate or they want to take part, because this is a week-long event, how can they actually participate?
Yeah, so you can check out our website, childnutritioncouncil.com, or check us out on social media. Check out the list of participating restaurants for Stone Soup 2025. And if there's one in your neighborhood, go and buy a bowl of soup. So the restaurant will donate $1 for every bowl of soup for the event. And if you'd like to make a donation, you can do that online as well. And we're holding a raffle, and the draw is this Friday. So if that's something that you're interested in, there's info on our website as well.
Well, Maxine, thank you so much for joining us. I'm a little bit hungry here on the show. I've been to Stone Soup before, and it is a wonderful event. So thank you so much for taking the time, to join us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Take care.
You too. That is Maxine Meadows, a community dietitian and operations manager with the Child Nutrition Council. It is 12:22, and you are listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. Looming tariffs are impacting producers across the province, including hog farmer Scott Peters. The fourth-generation hog farmer is president of Herbisville Farms near Randolph, Manitoba. He described to the Current's Matt Galloway earlier today what 25% tariffs could mean to his operations.
You've seen some things. What have the last couple of months been like for you?
It's been very frustrating. There's a certain level of anxiousness that comes along with all of this. This level of uncertainty that we have really fuels a lot of negative emotions, and you just hope that most of this can get played out or just not happen at all.
Usually, I've read you said that it's kind of a gut punch reading about these 25% tariffs and what that's going to mean.
Yeah, it certainly is a gut punch. I was actually just chatting with a couple of my processing friends yesterday, and we're all feeling this. It's not just the producer side; it's the processing side. It'll trickle into the consumer side as well.
So, help me understand this. When a truckload of your pigs crosses the American border on the 2nd of April, what is that going to mean for your bottom line if the 25% tariff is still in place?
Well, it's actually pretty simple. If you want to use some cowboy math, if a pig is worth $100, it's now worth $75 as soon as it crosses the border, the instant it crosses the border. The cost of that is instantly brought onto the cost of production for the pig, and so that that 25% it's just gone instantly without feed or without any kind of housing cost or anything like that. It's just there.
So it's not the Americans that are going to be paying that tariff? You're taking the hit?
It is. The importers always pay, but then they pass it back on to us and say, you know, if you want to get rid of your pig, here's an extended here's an extended cost to you. So yeah, now we have to figure out a way to recoup it. And as we are global price takers, we don't have the option to pass it on to consumers. And it just becomes part of the cost of production. And, you know, eventually the consumer will lose on this pork because you could argue that 25%, there will be 25% less pork on the shelves, or people would just stop buying it.
Why wouldn't you be able to pass that 25% on to the consumer or pass it on to somebody else? I mean, that seems to be the domino effect here, right?
It sure does. Like I said, yesterday I was talking to a processing buddy of mine. He says it's such a slow-moving ship to get the price to the consumer, but even he can't, because he's a wholesale processor. He can't pass it on. I can't pass it on. I just make the contract, and I get the dollars for the pig that I've sold. I can't add more onto it.
How many people do you have working for you on your farm?
Somewhere around 50 right now.
And so what are you telling them? I mean, this cloud is hanging over the country, and it's darker in certain parts of the country depending on the industries that are there. What are you telling those people who work for you?
Well, you know, they're asking a lot of questions. Let's just say the contracts get canceled because the price is too high to pay the tariff. Then we can't ship our pigs anywhere. And then instantly we have a backlog of animals in our barn, which becomes, of course, an animal welfare issue, which is a whole nother topic. But in terms of the laborers, and these people have families, they all have kids that want to go to school, they're trying to build a future. What ends up happening is that they stop, especially in the rural areas here where a lot of the communities are built on volunteerism from people that work in the area. They stop doing those things. They move to the city, they get a job in the city, and the rural areas lose even, like, just pick something, arena staff or the local farmers markets. You know, these people just disappear. And so I keep telling them to keep their chin up. You know, that right now the tariffs are not on. We are, of course, watching it very closely to see what move Mr. Trump will make next. But yeah, it's hard to stay positive all the time.
You able to keep your chin up in this?
Yes, right now I am. We are also canola growers, so there's that. But I am able to keep my chin up for now.
You just wonder whether that fifth generation of farmers will follow you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, my son is farming as well with me, and he keeps asking me what happens next, right? And so with this level of uncertainty and not knowing, and just sort of at the whim of a madman, you just kind of feel like you're not getting the information that you need on a daily basis. You know, we're just kind of all just waiting on pins and needles.
That is Scott Peters, a pork producer near Randolph, Manitoba. He was speaking with The Current's Matt Galloway.
Every corner of Canada deserves a voice. Local news connects us from coast to coast to coast. CBC is expanding local news locations all over the country, and we're looking for storytellers. Help us tell your story and make a difference in your community. Visit cbc.ca/workwithus to apply today.
5 perceptive panelists, 5 blockbuster books, 4 days of smart and sassy deliberation and debate, but there can only be one winner. The best book to change the narrative. Hi, I'm Ali Hassan, and I'm hosting Canada's favorite book battle, Canada Reads 2025. One book to change the narrative.
Canada Reads starts Monday, March 17th. For more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
12:29, we are coming up to your local news here on CBC Radio 1. Coming up during our call-in segment, it can be a challenge these days to find healthy, wholesome foods when the cost of groceries is going up. A Winnipeg dietitian will join us during our call-in conversation to take your questions on how to feed yourself healthy food on a budget. March is Nutrition Month, and of course, she'll be sharing some tips too on how you can create a healthy meal for yourself on a budget. So stay tuned for that. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, 97.9 FM in Brandon. We're also everywhere on the CBC Listen app and streaming on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Stay with us. Your CBC local news is coming up next.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon. I'm Julie Buckingham in downtown Winnipeg. At 12:30, overcast and -3. Some sun this afternoon and +1. Voting continues this afternoon in a Winnipeg by-election to fill a seat once held by former Education Minister Nello Altamare. Altamare died in January, leaving vacant the seat in the longtime NDP stronghold of Transcona. Those casting a ballot until 8 tonight must bring their voter information card, along with another piece of ID. Unofficial results will be posted online once they become available after the polls close. Official results will be verified by Friday. Israel says it is hitting Hamas targets today in its heaviest assault on the Gaza Strip since a ceasefire took effect in the region in January. The acting U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Dorothy Shea, says Washington supports Israel's actions.
The blame for the resumption of hostilities lies solely with Hamas.
Palestinian health authorities say Israeli airstrikes overnight killed more than 400 people. Those strikes ended weeks of relative calm after talks to secure a permanent ceasefire stalled. Shea says Hamas has refused every proposal and deadline to extend the first phase of the brokered deal and release more hostages. Hamas has insisted on moving into the second phase, meaning the withdrawal of Israeli troops. Canada's inflation rate taking a big jump last month. Statistics Canada says it surged to 2.6%, up from 1.9% in January. Anise Haderi has more.
2.6% in February. That's how much the Consumer Price Index increased by. That's a jump from the month before. So that means prices went higher faster in February than they did in January. While 2.6 is higher than that dead center Goldilocks, just right 2% the Bank of Canada likes for inflation, it is still within their target range. And in particular, Statistics Canada points out the end to the temporary cut on GST and HST spiked inflation because they calculate it based on many after-tax prices. That's possibly one reason restaurant food prices contributed the most to inflation speeding up in February. Now, with inflation ticking up in February, economist eyes and the Bank of Canada will be watching to see what happens with things like tariffs in the coming months because those could also increase inflation. The Bank of Canada makes its next decision on interest rates in March. Anise Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
The American Kennel Club is out with its annual list of the country's most popular purebred dogs. For the third year in a row, the French Bulldog is number one. With its compact size, affectionate nature, and charming personality, the club says the French Bulldog offers what many pet owners are looking for. Rounding out this year's top 5, Labrador Retrievers, Golden Retrievers, German Shepherds, and Poodles. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News at 1:30.
How cute.
Right?
Yes.
Didn't Lady Gaga have French Bulldogs?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah. Marcy Marcusa has French Bulldogs. So she's in the popular...
That's right.
Yeah, dog breed group.
We only had like whatever the friend had that needed to get rid of the dog, right?
Yeah, and I got a mutt surprise from the rescue.
Yeah. Rescue is such a great way to get an animal.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much, Julie.
You bet.
That is Julie Buckingham with your CBC Local News. You are listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up here in our call-in segment, we are talking talking about nutrition. Why? Because March is Nutrition Month here in Canada, and we know that it can be challenging these days to feed yourself a nutritious meal in light of the rising cost of food. A Winnipeg dietitian will join us, take your questions on how you can feed yourself healthy on a budget, and also we'll have some tips too. So stay tuned for that. But first, let's turn our attention now to the forecast, and CBC weather specialist Riley Lachuk joins me now in studio. Riley. So looking at your forecast sheet, okay, so I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's really nice. There's a little bit of hope. We've got 2 degrees coming up tomorrow, 4 degrees on Thursday, and then goes to -7 on Friday.
Yeah.
So give it and take it away. Right?
Although, precipitation-wise, at least,
Okay.
a pretty stable week.
Mm.
We're not looking at anything crazy. But yeah, we're in that freeze-thaw. We're in the freeze-thaw season where we're looking at these temperatures ebbing and flowing a little
I
bit.
never know what kind of jacket to wear when I
know.
leave in the morning.
Because you'll need a different one by the afternoon when you go home.
Yes. Yeah.
Today may be one of those cases as well. We are looking at some cloud cover still across southern Manitoba. High pressure really is trying to clear us out. There's a bit of clearing to the east of the city and a little bit into the Parkline region, but low pressure south of the border is kind of winning out and keeping that cloud cover in place. And out of some of this cloud cover, don't be surprised if you do run into a couple of flurries through the afternoon hours. But I'm going to remain hopeful that we'll get a few sunny breaks into the afternoon. Maybe by the end of the day, we're into a mix of sun and clouds. But yeah, I mean, what you see right now is kind of what you get across southern Manitoba. We're at -2 in Winnipeg at the moment, -6 in Brandon. Thompson's at -10. Back into northwestern Ontario, looking at temperatures right around the freezing mark as well. Sprague right now is at +2. So yes, high pressure is going to try. There's a couple of competing areas of high pressure. One that's now off into northwestern Ontario. A second that's moving down through central Saskatchewan that will try hard to clear us out through the rest of the afternoon here. So maybe by late afternoon, we get some sunshine back here in the Red River Valley, but do expect in the west, we'll keep some of that cloud cover the further south you are in the province. Into Wednesday, rinse and repeat, a mix of sun and clouds throughout the day. Some cloud moves through central Manitoba late in the afternoon. Out of some of this, slight chance of maybe a flurry or two out of this, but really nothing to talk about, aside from maybe a dusting of snow between now and lunchtime on Thursday. Looking at temperatures today around the freezing mark, I've got Winnipeg at +1. I initially had us at +3 this afternoon, but I think the cloud cover is going to win in this case and keep us a little bit on the cooler side through the afternoon hours today. +3 into northwestern Ontario. Gillam, a sunny -9 this afternoon. So +2 tomorrow. Spring begins early Thursday morning, looking at a high of +4. And then we start to get a little bit of cooling in. Northwesterly winds will cool us down for Friday to -7 by the afternoon. Next chance for some rain comes on Sunday with a high of 3 degrees.
All right, Riley. Thank you for tracking that for us.
You're welcome.
I would have loved to have taken your original 3 as a high. But
Yeah, me too. We'll try. Maybe we can get there.
Yeah.
I'm holding things back to 1 right now.
Okay.
But
Thanks a lot,
You're
Riley.
welcome.
That's CBC weather specialist Riley Lachuk. And Riley, we'll have more on your forecast coming up tonight on CBC Winnipeg News at 6 on CBC Television and streaming on CBC Gem. It is 12:37 now. March is Nutrition Month in Canada. It's a time that dietitians encourage Canadians to reflect on the central role that food and nutrition play in our daily lives. The theme this year is Nourish to Flourish. According to a news release from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, the theme highlights how good nutrition is essential to our physical and emotional health and also to our social well-being. But with the cost of food on the rise in Canada, some people are finding it a challenge to eat healthy on a budget. Do you have a question on how to shop on a budget, or maybe you have some tips on how to eat healthy without breaking the bank? Give us a call. The numbers to call: 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can also text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. Would love to hear from you here on Radio Noon. Jory Jansen is a local registered dietitian and a health and performance dietitian and joins me now via Zoom. Well, welcome to the show, Jory.
Thanks. It's working out. It's awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us. Why is it important to recognize Nutrition Month here in Canada?
Well, I think that it's really important because one, we know about food costs, but two, there's so much information out there and it's easy to get information and misinformation that seems like it's quality information. So I think it's really important to have a good understanding of where and who to get that information from and not to just only do a plug, but I will. Registered dietitians are held to a high standard, held to a college. And so we are going to do our best to make sure that we sift through that myth information and get you what is actually quality, real information.
And Jory, you touched on it. I mean, with social media and everything online and all this information coming at us, I mean, what are some resources that people can turn to get good information? Because sometimes it can be kind of overwhelming, especially when you hear it from so many different avenues.
Absolutely. I think there are many places, and a lot of the avenues that have some questionable, they also have some good stuff too. But going to your College of Dietitians, so Dietitians of Canada is a great resource. Lots of free resources, recipes, how to meal prep, how to plan, and then also who you could actually connect with should you want to work with someone to help sort through to figure out. Because I find what is a budget is different for everybody. People have different incomes, they have different time budgets. So what's a budget for a certain family or a certain person is going to be very different. And you need to be able to accommodate to your own personal needs, your lifestyle needs.
We are speaking with Jory Jansen, a local registered dietitian and a health and performance dietitian here on Radio Noon. We're talking about nutrition. Give us a call if you have a question, a tip, a story, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can also text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. So Jory, what should people be thinking about when we're talking about good nutrition?
I think one of the things that people could think about is what are their, again, depending, what are your either personal needs or your family needs. That's a big one there. And then the biggest piece is having a plan. If you don't have a plan, it's like showing up to a meeting and the person who is chairing the meeting doesn't have a plan for how it's going to go. And it's chaotic. It's a waste of time. People are engaged, not engaged, and things don't happen. And it's the same thing when you can have a plan, but be flexible with what happens. But, taking some time to create a plan is really important. And I feel like Canadians are pretty savvy already in terms of how to create that plan and stick within a budget. So I hope people call in with their stories and what works for them. Because based on my experience working with my clients, I have some pretty smart clients. They know what to do, and it's just a matter of someone reminding them that they do know what to do and what their resources are.
When you talk about a budget, we know that a lot of people have made the switch over to frozen veggies, frozen fruits, frozen proteins. If you've made any kind of switch to frozen fruits or veggies, are you losing any nutritional value, or even if you also buy it canned compared to fresh?
Such a great question. And I was actually just speaking to a client last week about that, and he was shocked. Things that I thought, everybody knows, but not necessarily. So when you're buying your produce frozen, it's already picked at its prime, and then it's sealed up, it's frozen, so it's keeping the freshness. Whereas when you're keeping your produce out, and it's fresh, it's great, but it does start to lose some nutritional value over time as it's being transported. It's sitting in this grocery store. When you bring it home, it's still great, still very nutritious. The frozen is going to be even that much more nutritious, possibly, depending on how you eat, how you handle your food. But so frozen is great. I always have bags of frozen, and they are great for the budget for money and also for your time budget. So in terms of money, a lot of times when you go to open up that crisper and you're like, shoot, I forgot about that asparagus. It was such a great deal last week. Now you're throwing out the cost of that great deal into the garbage. That's a waste of money, right? So when you have the frozen on hand, it's convenient. You can throw it into anything. Maybe you like those rice or noodle dishes and you had some frozen rice that you cooked up before. You throw in a couple handfuls of your frozen veggies, whatever protein you might have on hand, whether it's plant-based, which also could save you some money, or an animal source of protein. And you can quickly put things together when you have either purchased and or cooked up in advance and froze some of those items to put together on a very busy night where you might go, let's go to the drive-through. And just for two people, it can cost you $50 going through a drive-through. So much cheaper to have a plan, prepare, so you can execute the plan when it's time.
We're speaking with Jory Jansen here on Radio Noon, a registered dietitian and a health and performance dietitian. We are taking your questions about you eating on a budget. Do you have any questions on how to find healthy, nutritious food on a budget? Give us a call. You can also call and share your tips with us. The number to call is 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893, or you can text us at 204-588-7355, 204-588-7355. Jory, you've touched on it a few times. A plan, making that plan, because why is it important to make a plan and stick with that plan?
Well, I'm hoping there's at least a few people that are like me. I will go into the grocery store and it can be overwhelming, especially depending on which ones you go to. It gets a little busy and chaotic. And if we have only so much brain capacity based on what's going on in our lives, you hit that grocery store and everything's gone. It's like, I have no idea. So then, you're hitting those end aisles and you're just going from aisle to aisle and throwing things in. Oh, that looks good. That looks good. And all of a sudden, what could have been a $250 or even a $300 cart is now, heading to the $500. And that's a lot. So having a plan keeps you focused. Of course, you want to be somewhat flexible. Something that you had thought, I checked the apps and chicken breasts were on sale and the store sold out. So you have to be somewhat flexible with your plan. But creating the plan, I think, allows you to, first of all, and true story I'll share in a second, is look through your cupboards, look through the fridge, look through the freezer. What do you already have? Can you base your meals for that week based on what you already have? And then what's missing? I once went to a client's home and I was going through their cupboard, and I'm not kidding, they had 3 bottles of honey. They had about 5 bottles of vanilla. And like, are you not checking first before you go? Because that's going to be really helpful versus like, I'm not sure. So a plan saves you time and it saves you money as well, and space.
Yeah, because I'm bad for that too. I say, on the way home, I got to stop by the grocery store. I have to pick up something and realize when I get home, I actually had it and I could have saved myself that money and that time too.
Yeah. That takes time. And so when you can start doing that, and you don't have to change your world at once, maybe you're going to try this, once every other week, just to have a plan, write it out, think about what main meals do you need. And if you're like me, I didn't combine chef and dietitian as one thing. So I don't enjoy the meal prep process, but I have to do it. And so it's thinking about, what is it that I can do in advance to make life easier? And so having that idea of, I've got some canned beans, great. And I have ground meat, but not enough for the meal that I want. Combine the plant-based protein with the animal source protein, and it expands. So now you've got 2 or 3 meals, and you don't want to eat it all week. So you take half of it and freeze it and have the other half for a couple of days. Just easy ways to save time and energy and money in the end.
We're speaking with Jory Jansen, a local registered dietitian and a health performance dietitian here on Radio Noon. We're taking your questions about eating on a budget, eating healthy on a budget. Give us a call, 204-780-0893. You can also text us at 204-588-7355. Jory, if people are looking for deals or good places to buy food, they're looking to save some money, what are some of your tips there?
So one of the things that I find can be quite helpful for some people, it doesn't work for everyone. So it would be calling in your grocery list to the store and have them put it together. Delivery is an extra cost, so you might want to go and pick it up. So that'll save you a little bit. But if you're not in the store being like sidelined by all of these other things that you probably don't need, that can save you money. So that's one. Another one is people sometimes think that just because it's in a bigger container or packaging, that that's going to be a better deal. One of the things that I stress when I do a grocery store tour with my clients is look at the unit price. Sometimes the smaller package is a better deal. So just be a little bit savvy that way. Take a look at how much is it per serving, and then you can take a look at, is that bigger bulk option really better for you, or is getting the smaller package for that particular week the better deal? So just being a little bit savvy in terms of that as well is good. And then where can you save money outside of that so you can put the money into nourishing food? So instead of going to a coffee shop and getting that fancy coffee, you could make your own fancy coffee at home, and it saves a lot of money. And it's not to say don't get that fancy coffee, but just not every day. $5 to $8 every day adds up. So maybe it's once a week or once a month you get your coffee from the coffee shop that you really enjoy, and then the rest of the week you can make your own fancy coffee. So things like that really help out. Same thing with making your own energy bites instead of the $5 one-time granola bar. Make your own. So there are some things like that. And again, I get it, time. And if you're not someone that enjoys a lot of meal prep, you can still do it at, 1 or 2 points within the month and save you a lot of time and keep money in your bank account.
I want to talk about the theme too of this month, Nourish to Flourish. It talked about how food has a connection to emotional well-being and also social well-being. How does food actually take care of us mentally and also socially as well too?
Yeah, well, I'll hit on the social one. I think it's really important. I will work with clients and that will have a different cultural background or just different food experiences than what I've had growing up. And so it's really important to take that into account. I had one client that was like, well, I grew up with white rice. Do I have to have brown rice? And the truth is you can have either. Whichever one sits well and is comforting for you. I think that's important because there's something that's called the food addition rule. So if you're having something that's more simple, a little less fiber, you can add protein, healthy fats, and more fibrous options to it. And now you've got that balanced meal and you didn't have to take out anything that was homey and part of your culture growing up. So I think that that's really important to look at. Then the nourishment part, our brain actually needs good nutrition continuously throughout the day. Our muscles need to have good nourishment to build, repair, to keep us healthy. So I think it's really important to think as food as not just medicine, but food as nourishing. What does nourishing mean to you? So health-wise as well, and fun. So I think that we look at food as several aspects of us because we're not just one thing. And I think that that all helps with our mental well-being. If we're going with foods that are cheaper, which are heavily processed foods often, if we're consistently on that, that can actually have an impact in terms of our mood, our overall health. And if we think maybe not in the short term we're getting something in and we feel better in the moment, but long term that can have an impact in terms of our mental health and our long-term physical health.
Jory, we have a caller on the line. Brenda is joining us now. Hi, Brenda.
Hi.
What's your question?
Hi. Yeah. I wanted to ask your or your guest about things like making a fresh salad. I had a really good salad at Boston Pizza yesterday, and things like lettuce and arugula and fresh spinach. Well, you can freeze spinach, but you have to cook with it once it's frozen because it's gooey. But lettuce and arugula, things like that, you can't freeze. I'm wondering what your advice is on that.
I love that question. Thank you. I think it could be just looking at salads in a different way. So you could do things like mixed vegetable options and adding vinaigrettes and some olive oil and salt and pepper to flavor those up, or some salsa. And that can be a way of, if because I've gone shopping before, and maybe it's the time of day that I've gone, and the salads are just not the leafy greens just sometimes aren't optional to buy. They look a little bit like they should have been bought yesterday, perhaps. So I will look at different ways of I will take like handfuls of frozen veggies and put them in a container, and I will season them up different ways. And that's my way of having some food that way. But if you're looking specifically at salads, yeah, it's going to depend on what's available the day that you go shopping. And you could make some salads in advance, putting them in a jar and adding layering them with all the ingredients that you enjoy. And you can do that for several days and have them in the fridge that way. And just adding the salad dressing at the bottom and then layering up. So maybe your beans next, and then like your crunchier vegetables at the bottom and layering up to the leafy greens that you would have. And then when you're ready to go, turn it upside down and give it a shake, and you've got your salad ready to go. So it just might be just looking at what does a bowl of veggies or a plate of veggies look like to you, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your typical leafy green salad. It could be, but maybe it's putting some beets and carrots and peas and salsa and whipping that all up together, just thinking of it a little bit differently. I hope that might have answered your question there.
Thank you so much, Brenda. I love a good bean salad. Mixing in, chickpeas is one of my favorite things to eat, and it goes great in a salad.
Absolutely. Chickpeas, your beans, those are pretty hearty. When you buy them canned, they're relatively cheap. They're already cooked, so you don't have to soak them overnight in order to prepare them the next day. But it is cheaper to even buy them dried, and you doing that process as well. So getting that protein, fiber, those are going to be so good for your gut. And when you add protein to your salads, it actually will help you feel fuller longer as well. So that's really good.
Well, Jory, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today here on Radio Noon. And thank you so much for your tips. Some really valuable tips there that I'll take away for sure. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun. Thank you. And thanks for your question, Brenda.
That is Jory Jansen, a local registered dietitian and a health and performance dietitian.
Whispered into the night, the snow dug me a hole, and I wound up deep inside. It's colder than ever, blame my lonesome on the weather. My skin has laid its cracks, the night has whispered back. This is my call from the north. Yeah, we're stuck way up here, shivering on Superior shores. I'll do my best to find serenity. Must be hidden in the pine trees. Oh, this is my call from the north. I shouldn't be so surprised. A cold comes every year to dress us all in white, drowning in flurries, going nowhere in a hurry. I guess I'll play the part, give in to the dark. This is my call.
That is Sarah Kay with The North. It is 12:57. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Joining me now is the host of Up to Speed, Faith Fundal, with a look at what's coming up this afternoon. Hi, Faith.
Hello, Marjorie. March is Juvenile Arthritis Awareness Month. We'll learn more about how the disease can hold children back from certain activities. And remember Ocean Pearl, I Go Blind, or even Love You All? The band behind those hit songs is coming to Winnipeg, and we'll catch up with 5440 coming
yes.
up on the program.
Did you listen to a lot of 5440?
It brought back lots of memories.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Faith.
Thank you.
Faith Fundal, host of Up to Speed. Tune into CBC Radio 1 here starting at 3 o'clock. Well, thank you for joining us today here on Radio Noon. Thank you so much to our incredible crew on the show today. Our tech is Chloe Friesen, director Sarah Sanders, producer is Wendy Parker, and our YouTube live stream director is Travis Peterson. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, and stay tuned here to CBC Radio 1 coming up next. Unreserved. Have a good one.
A shoe retailer who's putting his best foot forward all over the world.
We are selling happiness.
A global symbol of quality forged in a New Brunswick village. And a giant of a man revered by generations of Canadians.
Look up.